Get out!
Hello tankers and tankettes, welcome to a heavy tank replay. And I've specifically picked a heavy tank replay because something happened yesterday. I finally finished the medium missions and got my Type 62 Tier 7 Premium Light tank. Now, to do that has meant playing a lot more medium tanks than usual. In fact, the vast majority of the battles I have played in the last month have been in medium tanks. Now, I've discovered one I liked along the way, the the Centurion 7-1 even, but it's meant being out of my comfort zone a lot of the time, and although I will be still playing my medium tanks, and I'm actually not that far off the E50M, it's nice to be able to play more of the tanks that I like to play on a regular basis. So this is from about 2 months ago. This is a 9.1 game, and this is with Jingles and Circon. So this was a Monday night stream. You can see immediately what's happening on the minimap here. Yeah, it's going to be one of those games, and I kind of looked at the tank I was in, I looked at the map, I looked at what the team was doing, and I decided rather than just go there with them, I was actually going to set myself up in a defensive position and try and hold back the enemies that might be coming down the other flank. Now the thing with this tank and this map is that although there is one enemy artillery which could potentially give me a lot of problems, the enemies to get to me would have to cross a lot of open ground potentially, so that gives me a fighting chance. The theory here is that I'm in a position where I can prevent the enemy tanks from just sitting on our cap, that I'm far back enough that they can't just immediately overrun me, and that the tanks that are on our east flank will hopefully win that flank and be able to come back and help me. So that was my thought process. I'm also going to say in this one that I was basically not shooting well at all. It was just one of those days when I play extremely derpily. I was obviously playing well enough to have had the thought to sit here and set up this defensive position, but when it comes to actually shooting the enemy, well, yeah, you'll see. Some days are just like that, some days I just don't play very well in that regard. So, I am going to sit up here initially. I've got these bushes between me and those guys. The lone T-54 that went over there is probably not going to last long, but at least he's going to light them up for me. Now, I'm not quite sure why the Death Star went for the T-71 that was sat in our cap circle first, but he did, so the T-54 lasted slightly longer than I thought he would, but yeah, now he's died, and that's maybe not surprising. Artillery, where he is, probably isn't going to last that much longer than the T-54 did, but again, he will light these guys up for me, and hopefully by that point they will be close enough for me to actually spot myself. So there's the Object 263. I'm just going to fall back down here now, and with the 263 possibly going for RT, it looks like he's looking for RT, and yep, he'll have seen him. That's going to give me shots on his rear. Now, yeah, you see what I mean there? That so easily could have missed. That was not a well-aimed shot. That was me just kind of panicking and firing and zooming back out all at the same time. Can I get another one in? Yep, there we go. The other thing I want to say about this replay is that often the names of the replays I've put up, the games, the videos, I don't usually come up with the title until after it's all edited and put together. And ooh, yep, that'll be a Death Star. But in this one, I knew from the beginning of coming to watch this replay, and anyone that's a Command & Conquer Generals fan will know immediately the reference, although I think it's been used in other things as well, but it's appropriate because Jingles is in this match, and Jingles is a CNC Generals fan as far as I know. So yeah, the title is going to be
Hold the line.
And if you are of the right vintage to remember that, then yeah. It's funny, when Generals came out, it wasn't that well regarded, but it seems to have become more so with age. So the 263 is a tough target frontally, you know, if you can hit it, which I didn't. I've actually switched to one of my very, very limited number of heat shells in this machine. As you can see, I don't really carry many at all. And just so I can get that 263, because he's going to be a really tough target otherwise. And I'm actually going to shoot where I know the armor is relatively thin as well, which is the gun shield area. And normally that's a bad idea, because that's usually something like spaced armor, but there isn't actually anything behind that armor, so basically that was an almost guaranteed pen unless I hit one of the overlapping bits, in which case it would have just exploded on the outside, basically. I've got a T62A that's with me now as well, which is useful, and yeah, that really didn't need to be a heat shell. I think I just forgot I had the heat loaded. I just still had it loaded because reasons. Anyway, yeah, apart from just throwing up the credits casually away there, the T62A being here is really useful because I can watch his back and he can shoot the 183. And him being there means also that I'm not just going to get rushed. We've been able to damage these tank destroyers, and that makes them cautious. And it's actually almost advantageous with the matchmaking that the enemy team did have so many tank destroyers, because the tier 10 tank destroyers especially, they have fewer hit points than heavy tanks. So we've had, in some cases, worse armor to deal with and fewer hit points, and it's just generally been maybe a bit easier than it would have been if it had been a rush of mediums that had come that way, for instance. Now the T62A takes this opportunity to track the 263. He goes round, takes him out. He knows they're low health, he knows he's full health, so he can take a hit from the Jagdpanzer E100, but it doesn't matter because that guy has fired and missed. The phj took out the Wafflepanzer 4, and I'm going to try and either track that guy out, or retrack him, or kill him out. As it turned out, I actually ended up killing him. So that's worked out. And this flank was, the east flank was basically won. And it's now basically mopping up. This has been, apart from my shooting being terrible, this has been a fairly good match as it's turned out, just with everything sort of working as I'd kind of hoped it would. And if I'd been alone, if I'd not been in a platoon, maybe I wouldn't have done that. Maybe I would have set up somewhere else where I could be more with friendly tanks. But the fact that I knew I had platoon mates that I could trust, you know, competent players that were going to be on that flank pushing things forward, well, that helped a lot. It's a pity that Jingles died so quickly, though. He actually ended up what was it, the corner at like G8 rather. Basically, to shoot from there, you have to expose your tank, and he got spotted and kablamoed. And this is going to be my final terrible shot of the game. Yep, I'll just shoot the ground there. Yep, I was feeding Circ on the kill. Yeah, that was my intention. Yeah, that was definitely on purpose. So yeah, it kind of all worked out for a variety of reasons, and I don't think there's that many other tanks I could have pulled it off in other than the ST1. And I don't know, I'm trying to think, the M103, maybe the T32, certainly, you've got a less good gun. T29, but you wouldn't be in a tier 10 match than a T29. M103, maybe? I mean, that's got a weaker turret, you wouldn't be as bold with that turret, but there's not that many tanks, really, to be honest. And the fact that this has, for Russian high-tier heavies, this has got good gun depression, you know, that really helps as well. So let's take a look at the scores. It was alright, it wasn't great, but it was alright, despite my best efforts to mangle most of the shots I was firing. I actually did nearly 4k damage, and most of the shells I fired actually did hit something in the end. It's just some of them are like, I don't even know what I was, you know, thinking when I pulled the trigger, and I was zooming out at the wrong time, and I was rushing my shots, and I was doing all the wrong things, and it somehow mostly worked anyway, but I think that was more luck than anything else. I actually came third on the team list. We had a pair of top tier mediums that did very well for themselves in a platoon, a Patton and an E50M that did over 9,000 damage between them, 6 kills. I was third. Circle was actually fourth, and he didn't do that well. He did less than 2k damage in the Conqueror, but I think he took enough damage early on that he then had to be cautious, and the Conqueror doesn't have the armour to be survivable. And as you can see, Jingles down there, just, yeah, he got nuked by a tier 10 tank destroyer, and it went very badly for him, unfortunately. But yeah, that's just one of those cases where you look at a minimap, and this is why the minimap is so important, and looking what your teammates is doing is so important, and also knowing your own tank's capability. Because if I'd been in something else that had a weaker turret or a much worse gun depression or whatever, I possibly wouldn't have tried that, and it may have ended up being a different match. But knowing that my turret was so good, and knowing that I had teammates at my back, and knowing that the enemy tanks, the enemy tank destroyers wouldn't just be able to overrun me because they weren't any of them particularly fast machines, it was just the right combination of circumstances, looking at the information and putting it together in the right way and deciding, actually, this course of action probably has a good chance of actually working. You wouldn't necessarily do this every time. If it had been a lot of tier 10 mediums on the enemy team, it probably wouldn't have worked because they would have had the speed to get around me, and even though the T-62A was there, we quite possibly would have been overrun because the team that was further north wouldn't have been able to shoot to support where we were particularly. So it worked out. It's just one of those things that comes with experience, I guess, looking at the patterns of behaviour that your teammates exhibit over time. So, if you enjoyed this replay, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, and yes, I know my shooting was terrible, feel free to say it. You can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.